Today I'm building a very simple TV stand or TV table with some storage. So check it out. So this build can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be or to make it. Um, if it's kept simple, you really just need some common tools. I will tell you about some different options during the video, but this is going to be used at the end of a bed to hold the TV, and then maybe some spare blankets and possibly extra sheets and things like that. So my table needs to be 61 inches long to span the width of the bed, and I'm going to make it 28 and a half inches tall. This will make the table even with the top of the mattress. I'm using one by stock from a local store, so this material is easy to get for everyone. It's basically going to have a top and a bottom, two sides, one on either side, and then it's going to have a divider that basically splits it into two equal halves. And then I think I'm going to add like a shelf on one side, and this should provide plenty of space for storage. I am using basic 1x6x8 pine stock planks. They're not perfect, but sometimes that adds, some character. For my dimensions, I calculated that I'm gonna need 8 of them. I cut all my boards to length with a miter saw or chop saw. You could also use a circular saw if that's what you have. So I have 6 pieces at 61 inches. I have 9 pieces at 27 inches, and then 3 pieces I cut at 33 inches, which will cut down to the correct size once we get that divider in place. I chose to attach my planks with pocket holes. You can purchase this jig, and it is pretty easy to use. It does require special screws, but the cost is not super high. As an alternative, you could use dowels or a biscuit joiner, or you could just glue and clamp them up until the glue sets. But basically with this jig, you're going to clamp the board in. There's your holes that your drill bit's going to go through. This is a special drill bit and a collar that comes with the pocket hole jig. If you use pocket holes, I always find it very useful to go ahead and mark on the board where I want to put my pocket holes. So this is kind of how the jig works. It's pretty easy to use. Just clamp your board in and run your drill bit down, and it's going to create that pocket hole for you. I usually clamp the boards together and then use the pocket hole screws to attach them. But like I mentioned, you could just glue them together if you wanted to, or use some other method of joinery. So the kit that I bought, it came with a square head bit used to drive the screws. I also found that using just a regular drill works best for me versus using like an impact drill. It just seems like the screws just go in smoother when I'm just using a regular drill, but that's just me. For 3/4 inch stock, you need to use 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. On the back of the container, you can find what size screw you need to use for other stock thicknesses. So there's 3/4 of an inch and 1 1/4. If you were using 2x4s, 1.5 inch, you would use 2.5 inch screws. So it's pretty easy to figure out, and like I said, these screws aren't super expensive. Driving the screws in is pretty straightforward. Try to keep the boards as flush or level with each other as possible. Just kind of put it in there slow, nice and smooth, and it worked great. So even though I tried my best to align the planks, you still may end up with some high areas. If the bump is small, you might be able to just sand it out. If you have a large electric planer, you could use it. My planer is only 12 inches wide, so this will not fit because my planks all together are 16.5 inches wide. I'm going to use a hand planer to remove those humps. It was not very expensive to purchase, and always remember to store it on its side and not on the blade. Well, after a few swipes and some elbow grease, I was able to remove the high spots, and the rest can be removed with just a little bit of sanding. So I am just using a run-of-the-mill orbital sander. I will start with probably 60 grit and then finish with probably 120. I know some people will go to like 220, and that's fine. But sanding is very important, so don't skip this step. You should you could also sand it by hand, but I do recommend some type of electric sander. So after sanding, everything feels pretty even and pretty smooth. Once again, do not skip this step. It is very important when you're putting things together, when you're joining things together, when you're trying to stain things. If it's a super rough surface, you're not going to get the results that you want. So I finished all the steps for the top, and to save you from having to see those same steps over and over, I went ahead and completed the two sides and the middle divider and the shell. Now it's time to attach the two sides to the top and the bottom pieces. I went ahead and attached the middle partition as well. But as you can see, using pocket holes is pretty easy. But you could just use normal wood screws and attach the sides by drilling through the top, and the bottom pieces. And as you can see, that partition's right there in the middle. So there you have it. When attaching the shelf, make sure it is as close to level as you can get it. Check in, both directions to make sure you're not sloping down or up, and then just adjust it as needed. It'll make a big difference. I am choosing to stain my table, but you could also paint it or just apply a coat of polyurethane for a natural wood look if you wanted to. Now, before I even do anything with this, I'm going to use a tack cloth to remove as much dust and debris as possible. That's very important to make sure that your work surface is clean. And then I use old t-shirts for staining. Since they have been washed and dried many times, they will not have a lot of lint, loose lint, or anything like that on them. And then, kind of last but not least, I use a wood conditioner before I stain any wood. This will reduce blotchiness, and it helps open the pores of the wood to accept that stain. Altogether, this is like a pre-staining and staining kit. So I got a nice even finish on the wood. I like this stain because it isn't too dark or too light. Also, to remember, when you are applying stain, it is best to apply with the grain. I like doing kind of the rub method, but you could also use a brush or a foam brush to apply the stain. Always look over your work to make sure that you didn't miss any areas. I always, use a rag to wipe off any excess stain. It will set up and dry faster and prevent runs and drips and allow for an even coat of stain. Now that it has dried, I'm ready to get it put into place. I made this for my son, so the measurements were taken using his bed. So just adjust those measurements based on the measurements of your bed. This project was made using basic tools and materials. And in fact, you could even use, even more basic tools than what I did. Why overpay, at some retail store for a much inferior product? This table will last much longer and is more stable than anything they can offer. You could make this with just a circular saw, a drill, a tape measure, and a box of screws and some wood glue. You can make it that basic. I hope you liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe.